let's get to the news. And we're going to start with this horrific murder in Charlotte, North Carolina. The national media has finally been shamed into covering it, but they are doing what you would expect them to do, somehow turning this into a story about Republicans and Trump and conservatives and MAGA, more than a story about the truth, which is that a violent repeat offender who should not have been on the streets murdered an innocent girl in North Carolina. What are the facts? An African-American man named DeCarlos Brown Jr. did the killing here. He's been arrested at least 14 times on charges like felony larceny, armed robbery, assault, and making threats. In 2014, he served a 5-year sentence for armed robbery and was released in 2020, but 5 months later, he was arrested again for allegedly assaulting his sister in her Charlotte home. He had a brush with the law earlier this year. He was not jailed. A magistrate judge of some sort let him go, free to roam. There is absolutely a racial component to this story on a couple of fronts. First, the kinds of soft-on-crime policies advocated by the left following the George Floyd riots are absolutely why Brown was not in prison. In the name of racial equity, many cities and states decided that violent, repeat offenders should be released from prison and left to roam freely in our communities. Brown himself is clearly heard on the tape saying, "I got that white girl." You can listen to it for yourself. Sounds like racial animus to me. And second, let me also say that the media narrative here is important. Everyone within the sound of my voice knows that had the roles been reversed and a white male, a violent repeat offender white male, had murdered in cold blood a black or brown female on a train, every national news organization would be broadcasting live from Charlotte 24/7. Every national news organization would be there. There would be public uprisings. There would be speeches about white supremacy. It would all be used as a vehicle for sweeping public policy changes. You know it, and I know it. And every honest person knows why the national media ignored this story and now portrays it in a way that sidesteps the terrible truths that we have learned. And I'll tell you one more thing. The victim here, Iryna Zarutska, is simply the wrong kind of immigrant. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, she's white. She's from Ukraine, not Mexico or Central or South America. The national media narrative right now is that a white supremacist administration is brutalizing illegal immigrants simply because they are brown. That's the narrative. You hear it every night. And yet, in this case, a legal immigrant to this country, a white immigrant, was brutalized and murdered by a violent African-American male. This does not fit the narrative. And when things don't fit the narrative, they are disappeared from reality by our media. The same goes for the shooting in Minneapolis a couple of weeks ago. That's gone from the news. You'll never hear about it again. Same thing from Nashville a couple of years ago. That came and went like it never happened because the shooters were trans and they shot up Christian schools. Doesn't fit the narrative. Time to disappear. Unless the criminal and the victim fit the preferred cultural narrative, the story is treated as though it did not happen. Or in the case of North Carolina, when ignoring it is no longer an option, the narrative always becomes, isn't it terrible that conservatives noticed something that happened? When a story doesn't fit the narrative, the pivot is, well, Republicans, they did a bad thing here by noticing, don't you know? The radicalism must be preserved at all costs. The soft on crime policies must be preserved. The left, the radical, progressive, Marxist, anti-American left can never, ever, ever be portrayed as being in the wrong. Never. If you want to know why our national media is held in such low esteem, this is it. The sins of omission, the sins of promoting narratives over reality, the sins of distorting the truth. But in this era, the era of video cameras being ubiquitous in our society, and all of us having access to social media, it has gotten nearly impossible for the media to get away with this any longer. And they just don't realize it yet, that nobody is buying the narratives anymore. By the way, if you have not read it, I highly recommend Kat Rosenfield's piece in the Free Press today on the taboo that led to this murder. What is the taboo? Well, we are not allowed to say anything about the crazy, violent people on our trains and in our public spaces. Look at this story. Crazy person murders innocent victim. Crickets from the media. But in New York City, when Daniel Penny subdued the exact same kind of person on a subway, he was treated like a criminal and charged. They attempted to deprive him of his liberty. Now, he was acquitted, but look at the societal imbalance. We look away from those who should be locked away for fear of being called racist or insensitive. We ignore their victims, but we persecute anyone brave enough to protect their fellow citizens. It's disgusting. Ladies and gentlemen, cultural decline is a choice. Enough is enough.